r/malicious compliance. First story. You refuse me to call in sick. You're breaking the law. After reading all these great stories here, which gave me a lot of enjoyment, I wanted to share my story as well. I want to emphasize that I did not want this to end the way that it did, but I also had no say in it. Around 10 years ago, I was working as a contractor for a large Asian multinational who has its roots in the tech industry. A small note, I'm working for a company who specializes in contracting specialists in certain fields to other companies. My actual employer has not much to do with this story. I worked for Company X, who contracted me out to the multinational, who contracted me out to a large aviation company in Western Europe. It's a weird but common setup in Europe. I have worked there for a good 6 years, on the on-site support department. It was my job to support just shy of 10,000 employees with computer issues, new software, hardware swaps, etc etc. I personally am specialized in VIP support, which is a separate role. Due to that, the higher up management are mainly older men who have a bit of a manual. You need to talk to them in a specific way or they don't understand it and get very defensive. At a certain point in this position, I noticed that I was getting random pain streaks in my groin area. I had been walking with this pain for almost 2 months. In my mind, I already knew how the tests would turn out, but I was in denial for a long time. I did not want to believe that I could possibly be sick, as I never had any medical issues in my life. At a certain morning, the pain got terrible, and I felt that one of my testicles felt like it was made of stone, and when I touch it, my body wouldn't feel/register it. Due to experience with family members and neighbors/friends, I knew instantly what it was. Testicular cancer. I needed no test for that. I called my manager immediately, telling him that I needed to call in sick to see a doctor as soon as possible. He responded by telling me that I could not call in sick due to the workload that I had on me and a few important requests that I needed to complete that only I could do. This was with VIP employees. I explained to him that this was very important, while I did not give him any details, as I'm not required to disclose what I need sick leave for. He flat out denied my sick leave. Let me explain. In my country, you are barred or entitled to sick leave for multiple years, while the employer cannot punish you, nor can they do anything against it, given that you actively work with an independent company doctor to improve the situation, answer to requests from them, and checking up every now and then. My manager declining me to see a doctor meant he was breaking the constitution. Now, here is the malicious compliance. I decided that I did not want to fight this battle, and I did come in that day after sending him an email, which stated that I cancelled my doctor visit that day on request/demand of my manager, and that I would be excused the next day to see my doctor. When the next day came, 2 things happened. My biggest fear came out, which I dreaded for months. I was indeed diagnosed with testicular cancer, and according to the doctor, I needed to have my surgery immediately. The time from diagnosis at my local doctor to laying on the table, in a city 30 minutes away, was less than 1.5 hour. After the surgery, they explained to me that I was just in time, because else it would have been way worse than it was now, and that I had metastasis to 3 different lymph glands. The day after my surgery, I had a big smile of my face, thanks to my morphine, and the expectation of my next action. I could now call my manager to tell him that I would not be coming in to work for a while due to cancer. The response is something that I will never forget. He was quiet for close to a minute as he realized that he refused me to go to the doctor while I had cancer, and responded that he understood and that if I needed something, I could give him a call. When I came home from the hospital, 2 days later, the aviation company, the customer of my manager, sent me a very large fruit basket and a card signed by all my colleagues to wish me well. After 3 months of radiation therapy, chemo, movies and boredom, I called the CEO of the aviation company directly because I could not reach my manager with the request if I was allowed to work from home while I continued my recovery. He of course flat out declined that immediately and told me that I should take all the time I need and not even think about work. He also reminded me that I'm being paid my full salary, despite me working or not, and that I should try to enjoy that luxury. I told him that I understood and that once I got back, that we needed to have a discussion. The day that I got back, 9 months later, I was welcomed by all my colleagues. I explained to all of them at once what happened exactly, as my employer was not allowed to share any details of my sick leave. After this, everybody individually welcomed me personally, and that was it. I went back to work without any special attention. I'm not the type of person who wants to be treated differently because of something that can happen to anyone. The same day, the CEO with the aviation company walked by and asked me to have a one-on-one meeting with him, where I explained how everything went and that I'm glad to be back. He reminded me what I told him 9 months before, that I wanted to discuss something with him. I was surprised he remembered that, as I wasn't even thinking about bringing it up. I explained everything in regards to my manager, that he denied my sick leave on the grounds that I had work to do, that he could not give to other employees. I also showed him the email which stated everything. Kids, always keep a paper trail. I did not think anything about it and expected him to have a talk with my manager, that it is not correct how he handled this. Boy, was I wrong. The very next day, my manager took me aside and profusely apologized for what happened, just before he mentioned that he had to leave for a meeting to attend at the headquarters of his employer. The next day, I learned that the CEO contacted the manager, his employer, with the demand that he would be replaced. He also trusted them to take necessary actions against him and that they should be happy that I did not intend to take any legal action against them or the aviation company. After another meeting between me and management from both companies, the manager was fired on the spot. I worked there for 2 more years, after which I left for a job offer I could not refuse. I gladly have beaten cancer and have been healthy for a while now. Second story. Try to become our boss. Screw over employees and order us to follow our contract exactly how it is written. Let's see how this works out. Before the company was sold and then driven into the ground by the new owners, I worked as a patrol supervisor for a high-end security company. Now let's explain some things that are relevant to the story. Only supervisors got salary. Our normal working week was 48 hours. 4 12-hour days. Anything over that we got hour for hour paid time off in lieu of a normal vacation. Our contract stated that if a supervisor worked any position that wasn't as a supervisor on duty, they were to be paid an hourly rate based on their average hourly salary rate. Contracts stated 2 more important things. That the company can buy paid time off for 85% or more of its value. If the employee agrees, said employee can also offer to sell it back for any amount too. Contracts are valid for 1 year. If the employer wants to renegotiate before that time, the employer has to pay so much for each month the contract is still valid for. Not the exact phrasing, it's been a while, but you get the idea. For clarity, we're 5 months into our current contract at the time. Now the owner, I'll call John, was awesome. He expected a lot, but he treated everyone well. Gave his supervisors almost free rein, made sure officers had the best equipment to protect themselves, and was generally just a good guy. So we didn't give him much flack over little things. Now we asked for, and he gave, the supervisors a discretionary fund for our officers. On most nights we had on-call officer, some nights we didn't. If we needed to call someone in, we could say, hey, come in and work and I'll buy you lunch, or you want to come in but don't have the gas to get to your region and back. Meet me at this gas station and I will buy you some gas. Little things to keep the supervisors from having to work regions and do our jobs. Plus it made everyone happy. Normal cost was around $450 to $500 a month, but saved the company thousands. He wanted a low turnover company and found ways to keep experienced people applying and staying with the company. Enter the new hours rep, Mary. Well, she calls a meeting with us supervisors. She has some things she needs to discuss. So the next morning, me and my fellow 2 supervisors show up. On the table was an end to the discretionary fund. It cost the company too much, she said, and stuck to it after us explaining how it saved money. Also, without going into specifics, we had to work exactly like our employment contract stated, no deviating. Also, any requests for promotions among the officers needed to be approved by her, which to her they were just a payroll number and a bunch of other things designed to put herself between us and John and become our boss. Now none of us had never really read the whole contract, so at the end we went over it without her. Turns out there are loopholes we could drive a truck through, but legally valid. Now we could have taken this to John, but we knew he would say to give it a chance, so we did. Seeing we were salary, our pay period was monthly, 30 days, instead of weekly. We also knew John didn't read certain emails or payroll until the end of the month, so we set out to do exactly as she asked. Stick to the contract. So, we each worked our 48 hours and other days of the week. I ended up working 24 days out of that month. My normal 48 hours as a supervisor plus an additional 24 to 36 hours a week as a region patrol officer. Mostly because without our fund it was getting almost impossible to get people to come in on their days off. So we split it up, but I did the majority. So we submitted a forms for not only paid time off for those extra shifts, but a pay request for hourly for each extra shift, which for me was $18.75 an hour for each one. I never went into hourly overtime for the week. At the end of 27 days I accumulated over 100 hours of paid time off from the extra shifts and going overtime on my supervisor shifts. John was added to the ML also, but the subject was end of the month forms, which means he wouldn't read them until the end of the month to verify the ones Mary gave him were correct. In other words, we double dipped like a son of a bitch that month. Now fast forward 27 days after the meeting and John sent us an email stating he was aware of the situation and scheduled a meeting for 8 AM the next day. We get in there and he doesn't look happy, but Mary looked smug, so we got worried it might have backfired until John started, and basically it went like this. Gentlemen, Mary told me about your meeting. She didn't discuss it with me first, or I would have stopped it. I also know, if you would have came to me, I would have said to try it out. Also, ours will never be in charge of the supervisors. You work for me and me alone. So holds up 3 envelopes and hands them out. Here is your hourly pay for being region officers this month. Your normal pay comes at the normal time. Also hands out another envelope to each of us. This is my attempt to buy back all your paid time off you have gained this month at 90%. If you don't accept, give me the check back. None of us did. Now here is another check each for the contract buyout, and I will have a new one ready in the morning. I have also refilled and reactivated the cards for your discretionary fund. So you sit as needed, and if you run out before the end of the month, email me. He then looks over at Mary and says, so Mary, how much did your idea save the company? Mary, $500. John replies, no Mary, it cost the company $12,000. That's what those checks totally. Sure, SpongeBob got the lion's share, but the man is a work animal. It still cost me $12,000. Then Mary said something that I'm sure she got fired for. She said, come on John, it's just words on a piece of paper and not really legally binding. Besides, the use of loopholes in a contract is illegal. That got us all staring at her. We may not have attended business school, but we are smart enough to know she was not only wrong, but dead wrong. Yeah. The next day John sent out an email saying the position was open and anyone interested to send in their resumes. P.S. The only changes to our contract was adding that we could get PTO or our hourly rate. TLDR. New hours rep tried to save the company $500 and ends up costing it $12,000 and pisses the employees off.